Hey guys, Griff Hanning here with CausePub, and I'm here with Brandy Campbell, one of the authors of our Couch Rebels book project. Brandy, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Very good, very good. And you wrote the story 27 Flies, and I think it has, to date, probably the most votes of any other story, and it's just phenomenal. I've gotten emails from friends saying, "Hey, have you read the 27 Flies, story?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course I did. I posted it on there." But it's great. So just first of all, kind of tell me who you are, what you enjoy writing about, what your passions are.
Sure. Brandy, obviously, and my actual day job is a writer. I work as a writer at a nonprofit that works with children in poverty in developing countries. So that's my day job. But I've known I wanted to be a writer since I was probably about 7, and
Yeah.
so I've had a blog for about 10 years that I think when I first started it, I wanted it to be this, I can only make these blog posts if I have something huge to say, and that paralyzes you as a writer and as a
Yeah.
storyteller. So I'd say probably about 5 years ago, I decided, I love telling stories, so that's what my blog is, and just
Mm,
telling stories about what happens in my life, and that can be about a trip to Target or a trip across
yeah.
the globe. Like, you just kind of have to, I think you just get paralyzed by that, wanting it to be perfect and wanting it to have this huge impact, and we forget that little stories have big impacts too.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, you enjoy telling stories. So the story you told, 27 Flies, was on the other
yes.
side of the world. Just kind of give us the story behind that story.
Sure. Well, I was in Togo, which is in West Africa, on a trip for work,
Hmm.
and we were, I do a lot of stories about children in poverty, and it's just hard. Like, it's hard. The
Mm,
stuff that I see can be hard, and the people that I encounter, while they're beautiful people, like, they're just going through really terrible times. and
mm,
and so I was doing a story about a specific child and his family. He was actually the millionth child registered in our program, which was super exciting.
yeah.
So they sent me out to West Africa. And so there was just a moment where I was sitting in this little hut, basically in Africa, and it was just sweltering, but we had to turn off the fan because the fan was getting picked up in the video.
Yeah.
And I think there comes a point sometimes where, as a writer, I have to disconnect for a little bit, almost this self-preservation. And so
Mm,
I'm hearing this man, this father, tell this heartbreaking story about losing his wife and raising his children alone. And
mm,
and I just started counting the flies in the room because I just couldn't handle it. And
yeah.
I think it's important that we show that side of storytelling. Like, it's
Yeah.
hard sometimes, the things that you see, but I do feel very blessed in my job that I get to go across the globe and meet these amazing people. And so I feel like it's a privilege and a duty to
Mm.
bring those stories back and share them with people who don't get that opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's great. I mean, it blessed me for. I enjoyed it thoroughly, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, thanks for doing that and for being a couch rebel.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you heard about CausePub, and what inspired you to get involved?
Yeah, a friend told me about CausePub, and I just loved the idea of just telling stories. I think storytelling it's integral. It's part of, I think, who we were made to be. And for some people, that's writing, and some people that's, telling oral stories and storytelling that way. But I think that it's like, if you look at the Bible, like, that's how Jesus communicated, is through parables. And
Hmm.
so I feel like any opportunity I have to tell these stories that have impacted me and changed my life, and to share those as broadly as possible.
Yeah.
And so CausePub just seemed like a really fun way to do that, to just maybe find a new audience. So many of the people I write for are either people who, know about my work, and they just kind of read stuff that way, or my friends who read my blog. And so what a fun way to just find a new audience to hear those stories.
Definitely. Well, great.
Yeah.
And you talked about earlier just writing it down. I mean, writing about a trip to Target, rather than having to change somebody's life through a story. So that is probably one key thing in blogging. But someone who's maybe just getting started, or wants to blog more, wants to write more, or even submit a story to CausePub, what other advice would you give them?
I had a writing mentor recently who told me, as a writer, he had won a Pulitzer, and so he said, whether you're just starting out or if you've won a Pulitzer Prize, there's always going to be that voice that tells you, what you're writing isn't important and what you're writing doesn't need to be heard. And I think there's just that constant battle to fight against that voice of oppression.
Yeah.
So I feel like I have to name it. Like when I'm hearing that voice and when I'm feeling those doubts, I just kind of have to stop and say, that's not truth. Like that internal voice or whatever you want to call it is not speaking truth, because like I actually just wrote a memoir as part of my thesis for grad school, and what a struggle it was to feel like anybody was going to care about my very personal story.
Yeah.
But over and over, I've heard people relate to it in ways that I would have never imagined. And so I think that as writers, as communicators, as artists, as storytellers, like you have to ignore that voice that tells you that what you're producing isn't quality and isn't of importance.
Yeah.
And then you just have to do it. Like, you know, you don't write when you feel like it necessarily. It's great when you do feel like it, but that's not, you know, that's, I just, you know, you have to, school was great for me in that because I had deadlines and I had to keep going with it, and just trying to impose those personal deadlines of I want to blog once a week, I want to take photos once a week, you know, whatever outlet you have for that storytelling. Like for me, it's never too structured. Like it's good for me to have deadlines. I'm very deadline driven. So however you can do that, just make sure that you have to make it a priority. It's not going to just happen when you feel like it. It has to be something that you prioritize and is important to you, because your stories are important.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. Thanks for being part of this project and just joining our community.
It's been fun.
Looking forward to other book projects with you in the future, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We'll see you, Brandy.
All right. Thanks.